We live in a time where masculinity is shamed and men don't know what it means to be a man. As a pastor and counselor, I've spent the better part of my life equipping and training others. My goal with this show is to translate my hard-earned experience into tools and tactics to help you become stronger as a man. This is the BraveCo podcast. I'm your host, Jason Vallotton. Hey BraveCo men, this week's episode is from my time with Danny Silk in the KYLO University. We dove so deep into how to endure pain and process through it, and also did some really fun Q&A. Actually, it was one of my favorite times all year of Q&A, and so I think you guys are really going to like it. Hope you have a great week.
But without further ado, Jason Vallotton, and do your thing. Your what is it? Your shaking hands and your emojis. Here we go. We're glad you're here, man. Good to have you.
Woo. Thanks so much, Ben. Yeah, it's such an honor to be with you guys today. And gosh, man, I just love this. I really do. It's just so fun to be with like-minded people who are running after the same stuff and using real tools. And today, I hope to both equip you for yourself, and then equip you to help others. And that's really the sign of maturity, right? Is when you start to be able to reproduce other people and use what God's given you, your breakthrough, to get somebody else a breakthrough. And so, Ben, is it the same people that I'm talking to twice?
Yeah. This is the whole group. So you have, thanks for the reminder. I was going to say this too, but you have two sessions today, really. So we'll take a short break in the middle, just for those that need it, probably 5 minutes. So give it about 50 minutes from now. Take a short break, and I can jump in and help too when needed, and then we'll do a second session.
Great, that's awesome.
Yep.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about working through pain and forgiveness. Two of my, they just so happen to be some of my expertise. I think I have a PhD in both of those, and you'll hear my stories and stuff. I'm gonna teach for 30-40 minutes and then do quite a bit of Q&A. My real hope is that I would help you guys right where you're at, and so that's the Q&A portion. Pain's an interesting thing because most of us, all of us, right? We go through life trying to dodge the punches, trying not to get caught, and making sure that we do our best to avoid the hard places in life and the hard things in life. And the real challenge is that life is full of pain. It's full of real challenges, real suffering. And it's interesting. I do this enough that I often ask these people, like, what's your process for dealing with pain? I was on a podcast recently with this, is a hunting podcast. It's probably the number 2 hunting podcast in the country. This really tough guy. He's awesome guy, not a Christian. He brought me in to have this conversation, talk about where men are at today. And about 20 minutes into the conversation, we're talking about how men are struggling. And in the military world, he's a military guy. There's a lot of suicide and a lot of depression. And so at one point I asked him, what's your process for dealing with pain? And he said, oh, hell, I don't know. I go to the gym. And I said, how's that working? That's the real question, right? Like, who gave you your process for dealing with pain? Who gave it to you? Where did you get it? And is it working? Because if you don't have a real process for dealing with pain, okay, follow me through this. If you don't have a real process for dealing with pain, chances are you're avoiding it. You're avoiding it. And when we avoid pain, see, James 1 gives us a really good framework for pain. James 1, I'm just going to paraphrase it. It says, consider it pure joy or hilarious laughter when you encounter various trials, for the testing of your faith produces perseverance. And when perseverance runs its course, you will lack nothing. Okay, so follow me with that again. Consider it pure joy or hilarious laughter when you encounter various trials. For the testing of your faith produces perseverance. And when perseverance runs its course, you will lack nothing. The challenge we have with pain, and Jordan Peterson will say it like this, like in life, you have to pick your suffering. Because think about it. If you go after comfort in life, well, let's talk about physical comfort. Physical comfort's great, except for when you're eating to comfort yourself. Then physical comfort today is awesome. Tomorrow might be okay. The next day, you do that for a week. You do that for a month. You do that for 2 months. Oh, you do that for 2 years. Oh, actually, you use food as a way to comfort yourself through your divorce, through your shame, through your failures. And now you have diabetes. Now you have obesity. And now you're not actually avoiding any pain, are you? You've actually created a culture of pain. You live in an ecosystem that I'm medicating more because the way that I medicated, it created more pain. So now I have to over medicate, right? I have to medicate because of the obesity and the diabetes and not being able to walk. And I have to medicate the pain that I used to be in because it didn't get rid of it, right? Food doesn't solve emotional problems. Food doesn't solve mental problems. And we get to this place where, because we don't have a real process for dealing with pain, we end up choosing these things that create a life of pain. So Jordan Peterson's suggestion, you have to pick your pain, right? So Philippians 4 gives us, it says, hey, when you're in the middle of pain, embrace it. When you're in the middle of pain, go ahead and do the opposite. Instead of trying to run out of it, instead of trying to escape it, what would happen if you just changed the way that you saw it? What would happen if you got excited that you were in a tough time, knowing that this is really going to test you? It's really going to test your faith. And because it's testing your faith, you're building perseverance. And as long as you're building perseverance, you're going to be someone who doesn't lack anything. That's actually James. That's the commentary. That's the Jason Vallotton commentary on James 1, is it says, hey, you just got in a really hard time, call all the people you know and go, guess what? I'm freaking getting after it. I'm growing stronger. I'm choosing my pain. And I may be in pain today. I may be in pain tomorrow. But guess what? I'm building a house on a solid foundation. This is growing pains. That's actually what I'm experiencing. I'm experiencing growing pains. The reason why a river is so windy is because a river takes the least path of resistance, right? And it goes all back and forth and winding up and down it takes a long ways to get to its destination because it's always taking the path of least resistance. In our life, we wonder, why does it take forever? Why does it take so long? Why did my divorce drag on for so long? Why did my depression drag on for so long? Well, if we don't have a farmer's mentality, then these hard places in our life, when we avoid them, we don't grow the strength that it takes to overcome them. And again, the challenge is, I'm just trying to set up this foundation, is we create ecosystems. Now I have a cycle. I'm living in an ecosystem that doesn't solve pain, it medicates pain. It doesn't embrace pain because it sees pain as a negative. It's a cultural thing, right? It is a cultural thing. This is a mindset it's easy to get stuck in. Because the opposite's really hard to do, guys. Like, it's really hard to do what James is talking about. It's really hard to get in this tough spot. Anybody in a tough spot? Anybody in any pain right now? Anybody? It's hard to go like, this is going to work out. This is really going to work out for me. this spot right here, God's doing something big right now. I'm about to win. This is how I grew stronger. See, the farmer, interesting thing about the farmer mentality is there's a verse in the Bible that says, those who sow with tears will reap with joy, right? You guys know that verse? And it's this picture of this farmer who is in a really tough time. See, back in the day, back in the Bible day, a farmer, this picture is a farmer who doesn't have enough seed to plant a crop and to feed his family, because his seed was also his revenue, if that makes sense, back in the day, right? Because I'm going to take the overabundance of whatever, of wheat or of corn, and I'm going to trade this, and I'm going to get this and this and this, and then I'm going to plant this so that I can continue to, year after year, have my business. Well, what happens when a farmer doesn't have enough food, enough seed to both feed his family and plant a crop? He's got a very tough decision to make, doesn't he? Because winter's coming and his family's going to be hungry. They're going to be hungry. But if he eats all the seed, then he starts the cycle of poverty, doesn't he? Because you're never going to get that seed again. If you don't plant that seed, you're throwing away, you're eating your money. You're eating your money. So he has to make this tough decision. See, everyone's crying and the farmer's crying. He's sowing with tears because there's not enough. He knows every seed I plant that's my family's not eating that. This is a lean year. These are tough years. But guess what? If you can endure, if you can sow, if you can wait a while, if you can push in, if you can persevere, when harvest time comes, right? When spring comes and you start to see those green shoots, everybody's starting to get excited. They go through those summer months, and then when the harvest comes in the fall, everyone's stoked. Why are they stoked? Because they all invested in that. That's their breakthrough. This is my breakthrough. We all have these misconceptions. Here's the misconception, is that somehow, someday, I'm going to be in a place where there isn't pain, that I can work myself into a place where I'm not experiencing pain. I can get enough money. I can get enough friends. I can get educated enough where I navigate through life without having to persevere, without having to do James 1, without having to, be in emotional pain or physical pain or spiritual pain even. I'm going to get to that spot. And yet there's nowhere in the Bible except for heaven that even depicts that. Jesus' model of living life here on earth, like how many want to endure what Jesus endured? And yet we are heirs of Jesus. That's our model. He lived the best life. Would you guys agree? Like Jesus lived the ideal life. Okay. His best friends abandoned him. The people that he were ministering to mocked him. He was under constant scrutiny. He couldn't go to certain towns because they wanted to kill him. He ends up on a cross. Like, well, I know that we know this, but we don't know this. Do you know what I mean? Like we haven't got to a place where we surrender. And here's what I mean by surrender, where you make your mind up. I'm taking the hard road. I'm taking the good road. In hunting, there's a guy in the hunting world, which I hunt a lot. I like hunting. And if you don't like hunting, listen, I don't blame you. It's fine. I just do. And that's just me. And so in the hunting world, there's this guy, his name's Remy Warren. And he's the best. He's the best guide, one of the best guides in the world today. And he has a rule that he lives by for hunting. And his rule is when he's getting ready to pursue an animal, after he spots it, he says, go the best way, not the easy way. That's always his rule, which means if the wind is blowing wrong he might have to hike around 3 miles to get in position as opposed to going 300 yards. So that's it. And a lot of guys mess up. A lot of guys mess up that stock. A lot of guys mess up pursuing that animal because they want to take the easy way, right? How many of you, the easy way has worked out well in your life? How many of you going like, man, that shortcut, that was awesome. I'm glad we got married quick. I'm glad we got married fast. We'll fix everything after we get, I'll focus. I'm glad I delayed, taking the e-course. I'm glad I delayed getting counseling. Like, give me something that works now. We end up in things that we regret. What is that? Here's what I'm trying to point out. That is an ecosystem. That you didn't come up with that. That was an inheritance that was given to you. That's the way that your family saw pain. That's the way that your family saw growth. That's because, see, the first inheritance that you were given as a human being was the ecosystem that you grew up in. It was your identity. Whether your parents nurtured you, whether they cherished you, whether they adored you, whether they said you're special, you're important, you're valued by giving you their attention when you were young, right? And you create and you develop, and this isn't even the message for today, but you develop these really strong bonded connection to your parents. That's what's supposed to happen in your adolescence. And that bond is supposed to give you all kinds of tools to learn how to cope with pain, right? It gives you all kinds of tools so you feel successful, you feel confident. Your dad was supposed to, was supposed to give you challenges so that you build competency. You build confidence through competency, right? And you get to 13, 14, 15 years old and you have this thing inside you that says, I know I can. And women, your dad and mom pursued you in a way that you felt valuable, you felt beautiful, you felt worthy of being pursued. Therefore, anything else wasn't really appealing. Having a guy who didn't have good boundaries pursue you wasn't really appealing because I know what it feels like to be pursued in a healthy way. I'm worthy of love. Okay. If you didn't get that, then you were given the opposite of that. You grew up in a home where you didn't learn how to cope with your emotions. You didn't learn how to regulate your emotions. You learned how to medicate, right? Because a need that goes unmet leads to pain. And we have our greatest need as human beings is to bond. It's that connection, right? So we know that social or psychological isolation, being alone inside of yourself, is more damaging than smoking 11 cigarettes a day. I didn't come up with that statistic. Being alone inside of yourself is more damaging than smoking 11 cigarettes a day. Okay, I'm just trying to point out, where did your tool set come from? Where did your ecosystem come from? It was a gift. It was a gift. It was gifted to you. And then we get 14, 15, 16, 20 years old, and we blame ourselves for our bad coping skills. We blame ourselves for the poor decisions that we make. And listen, it may not be your fault, but it is your responsibility. It's not, you didn't get to choose your parents. You didn't get to choose the abuse that you lived in. You didn't get to choose your hair color, your race, your social status. You didn't get to choose any of that stuff. That was all gifted to you. But you do get to choose what you do today with it. It's important for you to see that. It's important for you to recognize what was the gift that was given to you. What was the skill set? What was the lens that you see the world through? Because that's how, depending upon how you were gifted, that's showing you, well, why the heck do I avoid everything? Why do I procrastinate? Why do I not have more than I have now? Because you weren't taught. So I wanted to give you that framework starting out so that I could teach you how to actually work through pain. Because I have 5 steps for processing pain that I'm going to give you guys. And they're really practical steps. When I ask Christians this question, like, what's your process for dealing with pain? It's amazing what we come up with. And I won't embarrass you guys by actually writing down what you do with your pain, because it is kind of embarrassing. It's embarrassing because we say things like this. And I've said it before, and I know that you've said it before, probably. We say, I give it to God. Okay. No, I nail it to the cross. I'm just curious, like, how the hell do you do that? How do you nail it to the, like, I have a married couple, they're sitting in front of me, right? They're in a lot of pain. There's infidelity, wife's cheated on the husband. And they say, how do we work through this? And I say, you know what you need to do? You need to give this to Jesus. You guys just need to nail this to the cross. Hey, love you all. Have a great day. And that's as effective as telling somebody with anxiety, hey, you just gotta relax, man. You gotta relax. Oh, why didn't I think about relaxing? This whole time, I've just been stressed out. I've been struggling with all this stuff. And now I just need to relax. The problem is because we don't actually, here's the truth, because we don't actually have tools, we make up stuff that we've heard and we say, you need to give that to Jesus. Well, how? Do I close my eyes and imagine? Because I'm pretty sure when I open up my eyes again and I'm still stuck there underneath the pressure of infidelity, sexual abuse, trauma, it gets really confusing as a Christian. And that's why people don't want to do Christianity anymore, because we don't give real practical principles, real tools. We give theory. In theory, this is what you do. In theory, and we're all trying to do the same stuff. Like, hey, did it work for you? Like, no, I'm going to go back and nail it to the cross. Well, how many times do you nail the same thing to the cross? It's like Jello. Like, I'm nailing this Jello to the cross. The thing is you can't nail Jello to anything. Well, is your pain like Jello? Because it sure seems like it. When we talk about forgiveness, I'm going to do that next session. So I'm going to leave that little piece out of this one. They're linked together. They're so linked together. I typically do them twice. Like, it's really easy it's super easy to do these very superficial Christian things and not wonder why you're gaining an inch of ground. And we have to run back to medicating again. You have to run back to whatever your medication of choice is, checking out emotionally, overeating, scrolling too much Instagram, all the stuff that I'm tempted to do, that you're tempted to do, because we don't actually really have a process. So because it's the same people too, this might actually take a little longer than 30 minutes, but I'm going to give you step one. Before I give you step one, sorry, I have to continue to lay a foundation. In 2007, 2006, I started to realize, like, I'd been married got married in 1998. So 2006, 8 years? By then, almost 9 years. I started to realize, like, man, my marriage isn't doing super hot. There's just distance. There's a lot of distance. And if you've been married any amount of time, distance is not abnormal, right? Like, anybody married? Anybody ever had distance in your relationship? Yeah, because you're married. And so I started to feel some distance and started to communicate about that distance. And it turned out, like, I worked really hard to try to close the gap and meet my wife where she was at. And I just couldn't close the gap. And she just really couldn't meet me where I was at. And we ended up going to counseling with Danny. We'd been going to counseling with Danny for a year, just because counseling is a great idea. It's like I take my car to the mechanic and I get my oil change because that's a great thing to do. So we show up to Danny and, my wife just tells me, I'm not in love with you anymore. I don't feel in love with you. And over a series of, I don't know, probably 4 months, I just found myself in this marriage that I can't, for what, it doesn't matter what I do. Like I can't get it going. Like I can't connect. I'm nailing jello to the wall. It's like, I can't quite reach the mark. And about 4 months into to try to connect, try to fix, try to solve, try to help, I found out my wife was having an affair. This isn't to talk about her in a negative way. I wrote a whole book about it. I'm not doing that. I'm just giving you facts. And overnight, it just feels like my life overnight is on fire. And I don't know what to do. I remember sitting on the edge of my bed and just being like I just want to eject, right? Like all I want to do is, honestly, I want to give my kids away. I want to kill my wife. I want to kill the guy, and I want to escape. Is that okay to be that honest? Like that's what I wanted to do. I just wanted to, like, is there a way I can just start over? Like, can I hit a reset? Because I have 3 kids that I don't, I'm a single dad. My oldest is 9 years old, and my youngest is 3 at the time, and it's just so complicated and challenging. And the last thing I want to do is like, let's push into the pain. Let's work through this. You got this. And I remember just sitting there thinking to myself, like, there is no easy road out. Like there's no easy road. I have no good options. If I go and I find another woman, because I wanted to do that so bad, right? Like I wanted to connect with another woman to get that comfort and that connection. I've been connected for 10 years to a wife at this point, and I'm hurting and I need help with the kids bad. I mean, that was one of the big things. Like, I don't know if you've ever watched 3 kids on your own for a long extended period of time while your life's on fire. It's a freaking hard thing to do. Like I needed help. So I'm just being real open. That's just what I wanted to do so bad. And I remember sitting there on my bed, just thinking like, there is no good path. I've already determined that. I'm looked around. There's no good path. There's no quick way out of here. There's no quick fix. There's only one best way. And that is to process all of this pain. I actually have to process all of this pain. And God, it feels overwhelming at first, because every happy thought, every happy memory, when you go through a divorce, every happy memory that you built is now a painful memory. It's full of pain. Our wedding day, full of pain. Day you had kids together, full of pain. I'm happy I have kids. I just don't share them with her. It's just a reminder of what you don't have. Your anniversary days, your vacations, it's crazy. And I remember reading that verse, blessed are those who mourn, for they're comforted. And I remember starting to see a path. I started to see this pathway through, started to open up for me. I started to realize, like, okay, that's what I want. And I started to read James 1. That's how I know it, is because it became a life verse. Like, okay, the pathway through is to be able to mourn all this stuff, right? So now I have to learn how to mourn. I don't know how to mourn yet. I need to learn how to mourn. And I know that if I mourn, I'll get to this place where I don't lack anything. I'll get to this place of great strength. And the challenge that we have with pain is pain has a voice. Pain says, do whatever you have to do to fix me right now. That's the great risk of being in pain is, and I've talked about this already, but I just want to add this to the foundation, is your tendency is to undermine this process, because all of you guys could be out of pain temporarily right now, temporarily. You take pornography, will help a ton. Pornography is an incredible tool. Oh, it's got real bad long-term effects. Real bad. In the moment, maybe nothing better, except for real, right? Like a real person. Heroin, incredible for dealing with pain. Great way. Alcohol, super effective way of dealing with pain. Yeah, not beneficial. I'm just saying effective, not beneficial, right? In the same way that screaming at your wife or your husband, great way to protect yourself from a hard conversation. Effective? No. Creates more hard conversations? Yes. Pain has a voice. It says, do whatever you have to do to fix me now. So there's always that tension. And why you have to know that is because when you're working with people, if any of you work with people, you'll give them a plan and they have this other thing. They have inside of themselves. You ever do this at the gym? You get on the treadmill and you're like, I'm going to walk for 20 minutes on high and I'm going to do this thing. You get 3 minutes into it. And what's happening? You're telling yourself, you don't really have to do this. Do you really want to do this? Are you sure this is the best thing you want to do? Don't you have more important things that you want to do right now? It's like, you should probably be cleaning your garage. Guys and girls, that's why we go do a second harder task than the first one you're supposed to be doing. If you were ever supposed to walk on the treadmill for 20 minutes on hard, and instead you find yourself cleaning your garage, here's what's happening is you have picked a lesser thing to do that's a little bit easier, but that you could still feel proud of yourself like you accomplished something. It's a way to get rid of guilt and not have to work as hard. Your brain is designed to find the easiest pathway. That's what your brain's doing. It's saying, if there's any other easy route, take that one. Because it's trying to conserve energy. Your brain's trying to conserve energy. It thinks it's helping you, it's hurting you. That's a big underlying thing. How many of you have started a New Year's resolution and not finished? You've undermined and you could sit yourself down and say, will I be better off for going through this? Yes. Is this really what you want to do? You really want to quit right now? No. Why are you quitting? I don't know. Because I'm in pain, right? I'm in pain. Anybody cut wheat out of their diet at all ever? Anybody cut dairy out? It's very painful, isn't it? Now, you wouldn't think about it as painful, but it's actually very painful. Anybody quit cigarettes before? Very incredibly painful process. Or alcohol? Man, but we don't typically think of it in terms of, wow, this is a lot of pain right now. I'm cutting wheat out of my diet. It's very painful. That's why most people can't do it. Anybody try to cut sugar? One of the most painful things that you could possibly do. Cut sugar out of your diet. And you're like, well, how is that sugar causing you a lot of pain? Well, there's so much emotional distress and not being able to comfort yourself in the way that you're typically comfort. And that craving, God dang, man, that craving is so painful. It's so painful that I know that eating sugar is killing me, and yet I will go back to eating it and find a way to justify it. Now I will drink 0-calorie Coke, as if 0-calorie Coke is better than Coke with, right? Like, I'm finding a way, I'm trying to manipulate my world to get out of pain, even though I know it's still causing me pain. It's just less pain because that's how painful it is. Okay, I'm just trying to paint a picture. I'm trying to build this big picture for us on our ecosystems that we grew up in, and also how hard it is to create that new pathway because it's really painful. So you have to build up this other side, massive. You have to become a bodybuilder. You just have to become so psycho about the process, what it's producing, what you're becoming. And what I found that in every hard memory, in every hard moment, in every hard thing that I processed, there was a gift. And how I worked all the way through, and I'll explain the gift, how I worked all the way through my divorce, my 10-year marriage, how I worked all the way through it in a year was every moment I went, I'm about to get a gift. Every moment. I had changed the way that I saw the pain. Anybody worked out for a long period of time here? Anybody a runner or right? The first month you went to the gym, how fun was that? Not fun. Anybody remember that switch at one point you get to the place where you start to crave it? You get that place where you start to go, ooh, something's happening to me. Ooh, I'm getting better. Oh, this resistance that I'm feeling. And then have you ever got to this point? If you worked out a lot, you ever get to this point where you go work out and you're not sore the next day and you're frustrated? Right? At first, your goal is to not be sore. Right? They're like, do as little as possible to still work out, but not overdo it so you're not so sore that you don't want to go. Okay, what happens is this big transition happens where when you start to work out, you know that sore equals gains. Sore equals capacity grown. Sore equals big guns and tight abs. I mean, whatever you ladies and gentlemen want, right? Like if I go work out, I go work out with a friend, with a personal trainer here. And if I wake up the next day and I'm not sore, I'm frustrated. I'm actually frustrated at the trainer and myself. I'm like, it feels like a waste of time because I'm building something. I'm doing something. I'm going somewhere. I feel like it's so important that we get this foundation right because I can give you the tools, but if you don't understand the real foundation, you're just fighting against yourself so much. And the short-term fix, that short-term quick fix is so appealing, but it's the quickest pathway to hell, right? It's the quickest pathway to misery is do today what you want to do and make tomorrow pay. That's the quickest way to a life of misery. But the only way that you actually endure through all of that pain, because you know that you're going to be in pain. If you go to the gym, you're going to be in pain. If you have a great marriage, you're going to be in pain, right? If you're going to be a good dad, you're going to be in pain. You guys are like, you're psycho. You're a pain psycho. Learning communication. Anybody ever learned communication in your marriage? You actually learned communication. Was that easy or was that painful? It's painful because it's hours of work and then it's hours of practice and it's showing up, right? Like, man, being intentional with my wife, showing up and listening to her emotions, actually listening, not checking out, listening is painful. We don't think about it like that. It's low levels of anxiety. She's saying, I feel lonely. I feel lonely today. I'm like, it's 7:30 a.m. How could you feel lonely? It's only 7:30. She goes, I got up at 6 with the baby. And I'm like, what do you mean lonely? Like we spent all night together and we had a great day yesterday. And she's like, no, I'm just telling you about lonely. I found lonely today. I don't want to feel lonely. I'm not trying to feel lonely. I was just lonely. And lonely is a little bit of pain. And I like want to protect her from that pain. She's just trying to connect with me. I'm so afraid of her feeling lonely. I don't want to connect. I want to isolate because I'm afraid of, right? Okay. I'm not trying to kick a dead horse. I'm just trying to I'm trying to go deep enough that we see that you really see this world because this is the world that we live in. And this is how you get well. It's also how people get well. It's how you build a life that you're really proud of. It's also how people build a life that you're really proud of that we're working with. Like anything that we want to do, it's really worth doing. There is a cost. There's a transaction. Your effort, your energy, your pain, your sweat to go to the next level. Okay. So with that, maybe I'll do this, Ben, if it's okay. Before I go through the steps, I can do some Q&A right now on this, and then I could talk about forgiveness, and then I can work them through the steps and do some more Q&A. Is that okay? Can I just do this time how I want to?
This is whatever you want to do. It's great. Yep.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So I'm going to give you guys 5 steps for working through pain, but I'm going to do it after I talk about the forgiveness because they go so much together. That I just think it's important for me to lay this foundation really well first, before I do that. So What you're trying to do is you're trying to get yourself to a place where you have vision, real vision, and real hope for the life that you're trying to build, the pain that you're in, where you're going. If your marriage is hurting, you need hope and you need vision. If your kids are struggling, you need hope, you need vision. If you're, out of shape, you want to get in shape, you need hope, you need vision. And here's why: is hope energizes us and a vision sustains us. See, my dad always says the worst pain to be in is pain without vision, because vision gives pain a purpose. Think about that. That vision is the sustainer. It's like, I'm going to go work out. I'm going to work out because I want to feel like this. I want to look like this. I want to be able to accomplish this. I want to run this far. I want to lift this much. I want it, right? So I won't eat this. If you try to work out without having any goals, doesn't work. If you try to just quit eating bread, just to quit eating bread, you won't do it. You have to have inside of yourself the picture, the story, the vision of where you're going, right? Of what you're building. I have marriages often that come in. So since 2004, that's when I first started working at the church. So I've been working at the church almost 20 years, 19 years. And now I oversee our emotional health counseling departments, the transformation center, men's ministry, pastoral care type stuff. And so you can imagine lots of marriage work, right? Lots of meeting with people, married couples. I have marriages that come in and where somebody's been unfaithful, one or the other, the guy or the girl. And in the very beginning, right, of course, it's super painful. And going through a infidelity it's very challenging. But here's what people always ask, or here's what always happens, almost always, is one of them will say, I don't know that I don't want the marriage that we had. I don't know that I want to do this. I don't want that. I don't want that marriage. And here's what I say to both of them. I don't want that old marriage either. I'm not here to repair an old marriage. I'm not refurbishing a marriage. I'm not here to give you back what you had. What I'm here to do, I'm here to create a marriage that you've never had. And if I can get a couple on that page every single time, they will, in a short amount of time, 6 months, they will have a marriage that they've never had. What was the catalyst? Their pain. They're in my office because of extreme levels of pain. Finally got them to a place where we can now build a marriage that they really want. But without that, if I just said, yeah, we'll see, we'll see. What I'm hoping to do is get you guys out of a little bit of pain here, hoping to get you a little bit of relief, get you guys back up on your feet again. How many marriages are going to withstand, okay, and here's 5 steps for prostate pain? They're not going to do it. Oh, and by the way, here's how to do real communication. Oh, and here's how to solve these problems that you've never solved. Like, they're not going to do it. They have to have enough vision. But also, here's what it's also happening. The other thing they want to know, have you ever seen someone as bad as us? Do people get well with you? You ever go to a doctor and you've got this weird thing, whatever that weird thing is? Could be a crazy cough, could be a headache. What do you want to know when you go to the doctor? You want to know, you ever seen this before? It sucks when you go to the doctor and he goes, golly, you give me a minute. I've never seen this before. I'm going to go Google this. You're like, what? I want to go to the guy. I want to go to the guy who's seen this a million times, because when he says, oh, here's the deal, take this and this and this for this amount of time, you're going to get well. You know what you leave with? You leave with hope. You guys ever heard the story of the rat with hope? Okay, I'm just going to give it to you in a little bit here. The rat with hope is just an incredible story. So, in the 1960s, there was a guy, his name slipped me, who did this experiment with rats, basically to see how long rats can swim for. And what happened is he put these rats in a circulating bucket of water, and the rats would only oh, you'd love my notes. I'm not doing this from notes right now. I'm just doing it. Sorry, I just read her comment. So these rats are swimming in a circulating bucket of water, and the rats could swim for 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes, and then they would drown. They would go to the bottom of the bucket and they would drown. And so what started happening is he'd put them in a bucket of water, and before they drown, he'd pull them out. He'd pull them out and he'd rest them, give them food, water, put that same rat back in. And when that rat got back in, those rats, you know how long they could swim for? So they could go for 4, 5, 6 minutes. Anybody take a guess? Take a guess how long the rats could swim for. Anybody? 39 hours. Yeah, days. Think about it. These rats literally swam for days. They swam for days. You know what his conclusion was? His conclusion is that the rat knew somehow, some way, if I just keep swimming, I will get out of here. That magical hand will come reach down and will pull me out. The rats literally swam for days. See, the problem in your life isn't that you have too much pain. The problem is that you have too little hope. It's that you don't have enough vision. It's not that you have too much pain. We know people can endure way more pain than we're enduring. It's the story of the Holocaust. It's the story of Viktor Frankl, right? Viktor Frankl, he's in the prison camps with the Nazis, and it watches his family and his friends die in the ovens. But Viktor Frankl has this thing inside of him. He realized the only thing that people can't steal from me is my ability to decide whether or not I'm happy, whether or not I'm hopeful, whether or not I have vision for my life. And therefore, Viktor Frankl doesn't just survive, he thrives. Oh, his body is surviving. He's physically surviving, but he's emotionally thriving. And he gets out of there and he travels all over the world and has changed millions of people's lives because he realized that hope is an inside job. Vision's an inside job. No one can give it to you and no one can steal it from you. Well, I guess people can give it to you, but they can't steal it from you. You have to give it away. And why we don't accomplish the goals that we want to accomplish is because of the hope. When you lose hope, you lose energy. It literally, actually, physically, emotionally, spiritually energizes you. You have something 1 minute that you didn't have another minute when you get hope. All of a sudden, somebody tells you a testimony. That's why testimonies are amazing. It's the spirit of prophecy, but that spirit of prophecy carries hope on it. It's that prophetic word that goes, oh, I can do this. It's a story of Roger Bannister, which my dad tells. This is where I first heard it. Back in I believe it was the 70s as well. The fastest, no one had ever broke the 4-minute mile ever. And in fact, scientists have studied the human body and found that it was impossible to break the 4-minute mile. Couldn't be done. In 1 year, Roger Bannister finally broke the 4-minute mile. I can't remember what he ran, but it was just under it. Guess what? After Roger Bannister broke the 1-minute mile, that year, there was like 4 or 5 people that broke the minute mile. That record had stood for 100 years. And in 1 year, one guy breaks it. And then you know what everyone else realized? Here's what everyone else realized. I won't die enduring this much pain. My body can endure more pain than what I thought. It's actually possible. All those runners had something. That day, Roger Bannister broke the minute mile, or the 4-minute mile. He actually injected into all the other runners on his level something that they didn't have before. See, they had the physical ability. They didn't have the emotional and mental ability to unleash their full capacity because they didn't have hope. See, if you try to work through pain in your life without hope, if you try to work through it without vision, if you just try to do it on discipline, on guilt, on willpower, you'll fail every time. Your willpower runs out every night, has to recharge. Your discipline needs vision to even work. It doesn't happen. So we end up back in our old cycles. And here's the problem with this, guys. Here's the problem. If you try something over and over again, the more times you try and it fails, the more hopeless you become. The more you look at yourself and say, I don't think I can. You know what the crazy thing is? Crazy thing is I didn't do any Q&A on this session. That's one crazy thing. But here's the crazy thing. If we just talk about physically, every one of you in here, I don't care your age, every one of you could get way physically stronger than you are right now. Yeah, you guys all agree with that? Do you know a human being can outrun a horse? Not in speed, but in endurance. You have the capacity to outrun a horse. It's actually not, so I have a friend, his name's Ryan Spitz. He's an ultra marathon runner. He ran 300 miles, 330 miles in 5 days, nonstop. He was doing 10,000 foot climbs every day. He started in Eureka and ran through the wilderness, through trails, and got to all the way up to Mount Shasta. 10,000 miles a day of elevation climb is what he was doing. He's just a regular man. He's just a regular man. You know, ultra marathoning is a really common thing now. People started to realize, like, 50 miles, people can run 50 miles, no problem. 100 miles, people can run 100 miles without stopping. Literally run 100 miles. They do 24 hours at 100 miles, then keep going. You have way more physical, emotional, mental capacity than you think. We just don't tap into it because it takes lots of endurance. It takes lots of what? Perseverance. That's why God put perseverance as one of the fruits of the Spirit, is because in order for you to unlock your potential, you have to be able to endure. And in order to endure, you have to be able to persevere. If you can persevere, you can get to anywhere. And that's not just hype. It's proven over and over and over again. Emotionally, we know that you could have a higher IQ and EQ if you try, that you're not a fixed person. Angela Dueck did a whole bunch of study on this. If you tell a person, psychologists, they took a group of students and they split them in half. This isn't one of John Maxwell's book. They took the students, they split this group in half, and they said to half the group, you guys are our worst students. You are achieving underneath your actual capacity. They took the teachers, they split them in half. They didn't tell anybody that they were doing this. And they said to the teachers, you're our lowest scoring teachers. You got the lowest potential. And it was just random. They took the other half of the school and they said, you guys have our highest potential. Even if you didn't get good grades last year, you have what it takes to, right? You're our highest students. We're going to give you the best teachers. They tell the teachers, hey, we're giving you the best students. Guess what this test scores revealed the next year? If you think as a man thinks, so is he. Those students who thought that they were special, they acted special. They lived special. They worked hard. Why did they work hard? Because we're the best students. There's pride in that. Why go the extra mile? Go the extra mile because you're a Vallotton. That's what Vallottons do. Vallottons can endure pain. Vallottons can go the extra miles. Vallottons show up when nobody else shows up. We take pride in it. We have hope. We have vision. I had vision as a child for what it meant to be a Vallotton. See that gift my parents gave me? They gave me a gift. And it said, you are a Vallotton. Here's what we do, son. My dad used to tell me, you can make any job fun. I friggin' hated that. I get so mad because he had auto parts stores and he had I'd have to go down, I'd clean them, at 10 and 11 and 12 after work. And of course, I'm sure it's easy work, but back then I hated it. And my dad would tell me, he'd say, you can have a bad attitude or you can have a good attitude. That's your choice, but you can make any job fun. That's actually where I learned to sing, because I found that if I sang and listened to music, I eventually enjoyed it. I learned how to make work fun. What a ripoff for us who never learned how to make work fun, because you have to work your whole life. That was a gift my dad gave me. He would talk to me about what it meant to be a Vallotton. What was he doing? He was setting me up for a life of suffering. Son, you're going to suffer. But you're suffering unto. You're suffering unto. Danny Silk told me this one time. He said, Jay, when you come home, he said, the kids are going to take 60 pounds of energy from you, whether you give it to them or whether they take it from you. You get to choose. When you come home, you either engage with your kids, you either play with them, you do it on your terms or their terms. But my 1-year-old and my 3-year-old are going to go dad, 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 all night till they go to bed. You either give it to them or they steal it from you. And that's life, guys. That's life. You're either going to give your full effort, your full energy. You're going to show up every day. You're going to be disciplined. You're going to be building towards a life that you love. Maybe you lost your ability to run. Great. You can ensure that you don't lose your ability to move. You can ensure that you don't lose your ability to be flexible as you grow up. You can go through the pain, the effort, and energy of becoming flexible. You can go through the pain, effort, and energy of changing your diet. You can go through pain, effort, and energy of having close relationships. Well, people rejected me. Great. Then it's going to be really painful for you to learn to trust people again. But it will be more painful if you never learn to trust people again. Your life can be what it needs to be, whatever you want it to be. You just have to get vision and hope for where you're going. Okay, we're going to take a short 5-minute break. And then if that's even possible, I'll take a 5-minute break. But I will be back here in 5 minutes. I will start teaching at 2:06. We're going to dive into forgiveness. We're going to go through some steps, and then I'm going to do Q&A. I want to just switch gears just a tiny bit, but we're going to talk about forgiveness now that I've covered the working through pain one. And forgiveness is one of the most misused, misunderstood tools in the kingdom. And mostly because of how we've applied it and how we've used it and taught it. Often what happens is people, well, let's talk about where you get taught forgiveness, right? Like, for starters, you tell your kids, like, hey, this happened a lot in my house when my kids were young. Well, now my kids are still young, but when my first batch of kids were young, because I have 5 kids and there's a 23-year gap between them. So when my first kids were young, what would happen is Elijah would hit Riley, and Riley would come screaming to me, and I would, cuddle her and comfort her, and I would ask her, what happened? Elijah hit me. Oh, okay. So I'd talk to Elijah, and I would tell Elijah, like, you need to tell your sister you're sorry, of course. And so he tells her, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Okay. And then I tell her, like, you need to tell your brother, I forgive you. And I like the principles. The principles work. The challenge is, if I don't ever figure out, and more importantly, if Elijah never figures out why he lashes out at his sister, and she never really has a chance to process the emotion around being hurt, then it's really hard. Then we get taught these principles of, like, you just say sorry and you just say, I forgive you, right? But what about all the stuff that I'm feeling? What about all the emotional pain? What about all the anger? What about all the shame that comes from it? We don't really deal with that a lot as parents. We just want this thing to be over with. So you say you're sorry, you say I forgive you, and get back, go back to, don't do that anymore. Santa Claus is not going to be nice to you. He's not going to give you good things, and God's going to be mad. You're going to go to hell if you do that kind of stuff. Like, that's what we want to do as parents. It's just like, just don't do that stuff. And then you grow up and bad things happen to you, right? Hard things happen, or you do bad things. And you get in these places in life where you're like, I don't want to forgive somebody, because forgiving feels like trusting. Feels like I have to be in a relationship with somebody who's violated me emotionally, mentally, spiritually, sexually? Like, that's a really challenging thing to do. We have all these misconceptions. Then when you get saved, I'm just trying to quickly lay a foundation. When you get saved, we get saved into this model, which is, if you're at church, it's, the altar call, which I believe in altar calls. I'm definitely not slamming those. People come up and you repeat this prayer. Father, forgive me for my sins. Here's the list of my sins. Take some time, confess what you've done to God. And then I want you to forgive anybody that you have unforgiveness towards. Because here's the deal. The Bible says, if you don't forgive, the tormentors will come. That's in the Bible, right? Like, we could go find that verse. And which I also believe that unforgiveness is one of the leading causes of torment in people's lives, for sure, 100%. But we do this whole process pretty casually. And what happens is we say, take a blanket of forgiveness and throw it over your whole life. And that covers everything. And then go and do your life. Well, if you just get saved and you lived a crazy life and you were whatever, taken advantage of. And I mean, just the average life, right? The average life has so much pain and trauma and stress and all that stuff that you take this blanket and you throw it over it. And then you go to live your Christian life and you realize, like, why do I still have all these triggers? Why do I still have this trauma? Well, the problem with your trauma and problem with your life is that you're every age you've ever been. So if you saw pornography at 8 years old and that became part of your diet, that shaped your brain, right? That's where you got your sexual education from. It's where you learned to comfort yourself. If you grew up, and you go down that path, it really creates real things in your brain. And now you're 25 and you just get saved, and you have a hard time looking at men or women the way that God designed it, because your brain is shaped a certain way. You took that pathway, and it's hard not to medicate, right? And it's hard if you grew up and you were spoken to harshly as a kid, you weren't taken care of, and you found other men to do that for you in your life. You got into relationships where you weren't taken care of because that was part of your identity. Well, and now you're 20 years old and you just get saved. There's a lot of unanswered wounding inside of you. That child that was sexually molested, that child is inside of you at 35. If you haven't given that child a voice, that's the problem, right? Like, I'm still medicated. I still have this child inside of me that's going, is anybody going to care for me? Is anybody going to pay attention to me? Am I going to get a chance to tell my story? Or are we just going to forget that all this stuff happened and move on in life? And we wonder why you can get saved and you cannot be changed. You cannot be transformed. Now, do I see people get saved and their whole life transforms? Yes. Can God trump that process? He can absolutely trump that process. He doesn't need my permission or your permission to do that. But often, God is in the process, and he's not afraid of us working through and processing through our pain to get to a place of real health and real forgiveness. Here's the thing about this process. See, when Jesus, you guys remember when Jesus was in the garden and he was being he knew what was coming. You remember he asked Father God, is there any way that we can do this different? Is there any plan B? Like, I don't want to be whipped. I don't want to be beaten. I don't want to go to the cross. I'm so glad that he had that mode, that I'm so glad that he had that moment, right? It makes it feel human, because that's what I would be asking. And Father God's like, no, you got to do this. So he goes to the cross, right? You guys remember he's up on the cross and he's in tons of pain. He's dehydrated. His bones are dislocated. I mean, he's just so weary. He's literally hanging by these nails. And they see that it says everyone sees how much pain he's in, and how thirsty he is. And they put gall on a sponge and they reach it up to him. It says when he tasted that it was gall, he spit it out. See, why did he do that? It's a really interesting thing. Gall's a painkiller, right? See, when Jesus said, I forgive you, when Jesus went through the pain, he didn't numb any of it. Jesus didn't want to numb your pain. He didn't want to give you a drunk, I forgive you. Because a drunk, I forgive you. You ever get a drunk, I forgive? You ever get a drunk, I'm sorry? Maybe from your dad or your mom or a friend. I love you, man. When somebody comes up to you and they're drunk and they're like, yeah, can I just tell you how much I love you? It's like, actually, no. It just feels painful. It doesn't actually feel real. See, Jesus is on the cross and he's in more pain than he's ever been. And it's not his pain, it's our pain. That's how he got there. And then he says something. Just follow me here. I'm going somewhere. He says something. He's up on the cross and he says, Father, why have you forsaken me? That's a crazy thing to say to God. Why have you forsaken me? He's got all this separation that sin created. And he feels alone. He feels lost. See, Jesus wasn't afraid of his pain. He didn't give us a drunk, I forgive you. He worked all the way through it. And we get to do the same thing. And we get the benefits of doing that. So forgiveness does not mean that you have to trust somebody. Forgiveness does not mean that you have to let that person be in their life. Forgiveness means that you're removing yourself from being the judge and the jury. You're going to allow God to do what he's going to do. But also you're doing it from a place of healing and from a place of compassion. So I'm going to give you our 5 steps for processing pain. And here's the other thing that typically happens. People try to do the forgiveness step before they do the processing pain step, and it's very ineffective. It doesn't work because it's like this. I'm going to use a really wild example. Imagine that your son or daughter got raped. And then you come to them and you tell them, listen, you've sinned too. You've sinned against people too. Like, you need to forgive this person. Like, you need to, like, if you don't forgive, the tormentors are going to come. And what would Jesus do in this moment? See, and when we go through painful times in our life, it doesn't have to be a molestation or a rape. You have real needs that happen. And when your need doesn't get met, but you try to forgive, see, forgiveness without compassion is almost always fruitless, because compassion is what activates forgiveness. But if you haven't had your own need met, and what do you need to do? You need to express. You need the ability to actually share and process through what you've been through. And that's the loop that most people don't do in processing pain. Most people just want to be out of it. So they go, I forgive you. I'm not thinking about, I want to move past it. But you get locked up in this trauma. Because what happens is that young child needs a voice. It needs a way to go, I'm stuck. I'm frustrated. I'm angry. This shouldn't have happened to me. Where was God? I'm confused. Why did I live in this crap hole home? Why was I treated? Like, that's part of the healing journey. We don't like that as Christians because it feels negative. It feels judgmental. So we shut it down and we leave people completely locked up and isolated. So step one to processing pain. Step one is that you have to acknowledge that you're in pain. Sounds really obvious, but we learn incredible coping skills. And by the way, your coping mechanisms for life, they're not a bad thing. It's part of how you don't go insane as a child. Growing up in a home that was repeatedly painful is you learn ways to check out. You learn ways to, and we call it ADHD and we call it ADD. And we learn these coping mechanisms to distract ourselves from what's really happening. Okay. When you're in pain, you have to acknowledge, I'm in pain right now. I need something. Step number one. Okay. Step two. What you're going to do is you're going to process one thought, one memory, or one moment, not 50, one, just one. I'm not going to conjure up old thoughts. There's a lot of things in our past that you don't even remember that happened to you. Small things, big things that God already took care of. Great. We're not going to go dig up old graves and try and, that's not what we're doing. You know what it feels like to have something real right there. Do you know what I mean? It's right there. You were doing something. You heard that old song came on again, whatever that old song is for you. And oh, I'm back in this memory. I'm back in this moment. I'm in a lot of pain right now. Okay, great. That's what we're looking for. Now, what you want to do from there is you want to process honestly. So I like to have my clients journal. In this, because you can do it in the safety and comfort of your own home or your own room without anyone else around. Put on music that matches your mood, which, by the way, is not going to be Christian music that's like, I just love God. He's the best. It's really hard to be like, I'm so angry that I was molested when I'm going like, praise God. He's the best in the world. We have such a hard time. I'm just trying to help us. We have such a hard time in the Christian world being like, I'm angry. I hate you for doing that. We just want to praise through it. You can't do that. That praise is a part of the process. It's not the first part. It's just not, you can't exclude the processing. So when I went through my divorce, I have a journal for that. I would put on music that matched my mood and I would just start in wherever. I don't know what to say today, but I feel so angry. I feel so lonely, or I'm so pissed off that this thing happened. Your journal is going to be something that, man, if somebody reads your journal and still thinks you're saved, you're probably not processing right. You're probably not processing enough, right? It's not a commentary on your character. It's a commentary on what happened. You don't go like, oh, darn, my dad was emotionally abusive. Shucks. That's just such a bummer. Praise God. You're talking about your whole life. That's the voice you gave to that child. Oh, darn, shucks, bummer. So you're going to process honestly, right? That one thought, that one moment, that one memory, you're going to sit in it. You're going to play it out in your mind. You're going to give that voice, that whatever, that person a voice. You're going to process on it, right? And what's going to happen is you're going to type and you're going to cry and you're going to type and you cry. You're going to type and be angry. You're going to have these moments of emotion that are going to well up. And then you're going to come to a place where you get to step 3, which is you're going to find the theme. You're going to get to a place where you realize you're going to be saying something. You're going to find the real need over and over again. So I remember, I'll give you an example. I remember the first time after my divorce that I had remembered my wedding day. Okay, really hard moment, right? Really hard moment. I was at church. Worship was going on. I was It was school ministry, actually. Worship was going on, and I was laying on the stage, just on the edge of the stage where the artists draw. And I was just worship, like I was just enjoying worship. And then all of a sudden I was in this moment. You guys know what I'm talking about? All of a sudden, like I was here and then I'm here. And I start to like watch my wedding day happen. I'm watching it play out. I'm watching myself, like third person perspective, exchange our vows. And I'm like bawling. I'm up on stage bawling. And I realize worship's going to end really soon. And I'm in the middle of this crazy moment. I don't want to lose the moment because it's a gift. I don't want to lose it. This is a gift. So I get up, I put down my hat so everyone couldn't see me bawling. I walked upstairs really quick to my office. I come inside, I turn off the lights. I open my computer. I put on a sad Jack Johnson song on repeat. I lay down on my couch. I get in, I start to type. I'm typing out my experience. And I have all these things I'm saying to her. I'm angry. I'm accusatory. I'm devastated. And then I hear, I'm crying so much that I can't hardly type. And then I type and then I cry, like I'm in this moment. And you'll start to feel that emotion subside, right? You guys feel that before you feel like your head's going to explode. And then you get to this place where it's like, there's not much left in here. That's where you're trying to get to. That's step 3. I realized what I kept saying over and over again is, who's going to want me anymore? And what do I do with these vows? I gave away my vows. I don't know how to get my word back. I don't know how to get my vows. Like, I don't know what to do with vows that I gave to somebody. I can't keep them. I didn't have the option. See, what you're trying to get to is the needs that are driving the pain. The needs that are driving the pain. Because I could just say, I'm in pain because my wife left me. But that's not actually true. I'm in pain because of 1,000 little tiny needs. Am I going to be taken care of? Are my kids going to be okay? Is anyone going to love me again? How do I honor my vows that I made? How am I not going to be taken advantage of again? All that drives incredible amounts of anger and rage and frustration. You understand, like in your life, the pain isn't just what happened to you. It's not just a fact about what happened. It's all these needs. Okay, that's the thing, that need, that's what I take to God. Now I'm going to go straight from this moment, right? I've already said what I need to say. I've already been angry. I've already cried it out. I've already been frustrated. Now I'm starting to look at myself and going like, how do I do this thing? How do I get my virginity back? Is anyone gonna, whatever your question is, now I take that to God. So I have this real thing to take to God that I really need an answer for. And you will be shocked at what happens in that moment. That's where the gift came, right? Every time I would go to God and I'd say, what do I do about my vows? And he would give me an answer. Is anyone going to love me again? What are you going to do about my kids? I can't freaking fix my kids and they're in so much pain. And I'm a part of this. God, what am I going to do? He would give me a promise. Now, my need has been met. Yeah, my need's been completely met. After God meets with me there, I'm in a really good spot. Whew. I feel emotionally better. I feel spiritually better. I'm mentally better. A weight's lifted off of me. Now, this is where I get into forgiveness. God, so this is step 4. Oh, step 4 was take it to God. Step 5 is to do forgiveness. You don't always have forgiveness when you process pain. Sometimes there's no one to forgive. But step 5, now we're going to find compassion. Step 5 is find compassion. Because I've already said everything I need to say. I've already talked to God. He's already met my need. From that place, now I'm going to ask God, how do you see her? Or how do you see him? So God, I would do this. Like God would show me a different picture of her all the time. I'd see her as a young child. I'd see her as a baby. I would see her And I would have this incredible compassion for her. From that place of compassion, again, my need's been met. Now I'm going back through those things I wrote in the beginning. I forgive you for this. I forgive you for that. I forgive you. And I'm turning over these rocks. I'm actually thinking through, what did I write down? What did I hate her for? What was I angry at her for? I forgive you. And because here's the thing about forgiveness. We often don't forgive, mostly because our need hasn't been met. We're still in a place of real lack. But she could never give me back. Even if she said, I'm so sorry, she couldn't give me back what was taken from me. The person who wronged you couldn't give you back. Even now, couldn't give you back. Their apology doesn't give you back what you lost. Only God could do that. So when your need's been met, now I'm able to see her through compassion, walk through that forgiveness, real forgiveness for her from a place of compassion, and boom, forgiveness isn't like an onion. You don't peel it forever. Oh, you do if you don't ever get to compassion. And you do if you don't ever actually give yourself a voice. If you don't process through the pain, then forgiveness is like an onion. You peel it your whole entire life and you cry the whole time and you never get through it. You just have to keep walking through it. People say forgiveness is like an onion because they don't know how to walk through pain. They don't know how to process pain. They're processing pain as if they're in a library with God standing right there who's ready to condemn them for any bad word they say. Like that, it just doesn't work. It's God. Jesus isn't on the cross going, oh, shucks, God, I feel a little lost from you. He's going, why have you forsaken me? Where have you gone? So I'm 1 minute over. That's the steps for processing through pain. Here's the deal. You can't process if you're emotionally tired. If you're emotionally tired, you need to eat well, sleep well, exercise, have fun, and then process. Because you'll crash. You can only do this process so quick. So that's the 5 steps for processing pain.
Hey, BraveCo men. Hopefully you loved this week's episode. Listen, if you have not subscribed to our podcast, you are already behind. Go ahead and click right here to subscribe to our podcast. And if you have not watched last week's episode, you can click right here and watch last week's episode. And listen, if you want to upgrade your wardrobe, you can check out some of our new hats that we have in stock and all our other swag. Go to braveco.org and you can look at our store there. Have a great week. We'll see you next week.